Ladies and gentlemen, welcome back to my YouTube channel. It's Rishi, and this is the part 2 video to Form 4 Chapter 1 Quadratic Functions and Equations in One Variable. If you have not watched the first one, I would recommend you to watch it first before coming to this video. Without any further ado, let's begin. And in this video, we are going to cover relations in function. So relations is not particularly well covered in your textbooks, but I think it's important to make this distinction so that moving forward you will be able to understand it better. So relations we have four: one-to-one, one-to-many, many-to-one, and many-to-many. All of these four are the relations possible inside a function or a graph. So what do I mean by one-to-one? So just remember this. The term on the left refers to the x value and the term to the right refers to the y value. It is the same for every single one of these relations. The left hand side is always the x value and the right hand side is always the y value. So by definition, one-to-one means one x value will only have one y value, and for one-to-many, it's one x value will have multiple y values. Even if it is 2, it's referred to as many. And then many x value will have one y value, and many x value will have many x value will be the subsequential ones. So with that out of the way, let us dive deep into each one of them respectively. So the first one we have is one-to-one. I'm very sure that most of you will have an understanding of what this is. For those of you who do not know, this is a classic way to represent functions. It's called an arrow diagram. You might wonder, where are the arrows? Hold on for a second, let me draw it. So the same concept, the left hand side is x and the right hand side is y. This trend actually follows for most of the function related diagrams. This is x and this is y. And sometimes this is also known as f of x. We can also call this as domain, and we can also call this as codomain. These are just extra bits of information. If you do not know it, it's completely fine. For Form 4, it's not very much looked upon. Now, let's take a look at x and y. So one-to-one means, for instance, we have values 2, 4, and 6 in the graph, in the values for x. And for y, we have 3, 5, and 7. Just an example. So what happens here is that each value of x will have one value of y as its result. This is due to some sort of function. For this function, it will be f of x equals to x plus 1. Because if you take a closer look, you will notice that x plus 1 will give you the y value, which is f of x. So with this knowledge, we can start to plot it in a graph for better understanding. So let's take this as 2, 4, and 6, and 8, and so on. And then we can have y-axis represented with the numbers 3, 5, and 7. So just rough sketch, 3, 5, 7. These are not accurate, it's just a sketch. So what happens to this graph is, when we plot, x is 2 and y is 3. When x is 4, y is 5. When x is 6, y is 7. Then if we draw a line, we will get a straight line. But the point you have to notice here is, if you interpolate the number, or which means just draw lines from a number on the axis to the point itself, you will start to notice that every x value will only have one y value. So 2 has 3, and 4 has 5, and 6 has 7. These two diagrams represent the exact same thing. Every x value will have one y value. This is the relation 1-to-1. I drew these two so that you can understand it much better with two examples. one being the arrow diagram and another being the graph. Let's move on to the next one, which is many to one. A similar trend follows, which is the left hand side will be x values and the right hand side will be y values. Same thing, x here and y here. So for those who are curious, this chapter is quadratic function, and quadratic functions, all of the quadratic functions are many to one relations. So how that works is, for instance, we have the number 2 and -2. Both of these numbers has 1 as their common y. As you can see, many to one. And then we have 3 and -3. And these two have 2 as their common y. So it's perfectly demonstrated here. Many x's will have one y value. Many x's will have one y value. This is the relation many to one. If we were to plot this in a graph, what we will get is something like this. Let me extend the x-axis and then let's plot it down. 1, -1, -2, -3, 1, 2, 3, 4. Let's have 0 right here. Let's extend the y-axis. Then 1 here, 2 here, and 3 here. So if we were to plot it, we will get 2 is 1. When x is 2, y is 1. When x is -2, y is 1. Then 3, when x is 3, y is 2. And when y is -3, x is still when x is -3, y is still 2. So with extra numbers, you will get a graph that looks something like this. Yeah, it's a bit haywire, but you get the idea. It looks something like this. This is how a quadratic graph will look like. It's just that many x values will have one y value. So for a quadratic function, two x values will share the same y value. Now that we're done with many to one, let's move on to one to many. Same concept here as well, x first and y second, x here and y here. So for this kind of graphs, you'll have two values. For this kind of relation, you will have one x value which has two y values. So for example, 1 will have 2 and -2. Then 2 will have 3 and -3. So as you can see, this is how we demonstrate one-to-many relation. If you were to plot this in a graph, it will look something like this. Bear with me for a second. Let me draw it out. I have to extend it by a bit. This way and this way. Alright, so we'll have y here, x here. 1, 2, 3, -1, -2, -3. Then we'll have 0 here. 1, 2, 3. Then -1, -2, -3. Just a bit longer. Alright, so here. So when x is 1, y is 2 and -2. When x is 2, y is -3 and 3. So with more numbers and more figures, the graph will look something like this. Yeah, something like this. Let's move on to the last one, which is many-to-many relation. Same thing here, x on the left hand side, y on the right hand side, x here and y here. So here we have, for instance, 2, 4, 6 and 3, 5, 7. So what will happen is, one x value, which is 2, will have two y values. This one looks like one-to-many. But here comes the banger, where 4 will also have y as its have 3 as its y value. So this is many to one relation. So when one-to-many relation and many-to-one relation clashes with each other, we get many-to-many relation. That's it. Oh, look at that. That's a pattern. Okay, so these are the four relations that we cover in this video. And the only thing I have to remember now is many-to-one relation is what we utilize to solve quadratic functions, or should I say to derive quadratic functions. So that's all for this video. In the next part of the video, we will be discussing on how the values of a, b, and c affect the shape of the graph. As usual, thanks for watching, and I will catch you in the next one. Till then, bye bye.